Kenya, a nation celebrated for its breathtaking landscape, its vibrant culture, and an unbreakable spirit of resilience. But woven into the fabrics of its modern history are threads of deep tragedy, days when the very foundation of society was shaken. This is a story from that time. It is a story not of violence, but of what came after. It looks at the moments that shaped a nation's soul, pushing its dreams of peace, unity, and safety to its limits. From the horror of global terror attack in Nairobi, to the internal pain of political conflict, to the attack on its future leaders, and a school tragedy that could have been stopped. These events left marks on the nation. Over the next 4 chapters, we will bear witness, we will remember the lives lost, honor the heroes who emerged from the chaos, and see how a nation faces its worst time, and how it works to heal.
People really should sort their problems without terrorizing others. How do you expect this to support from people of Kenya? Kenya has always lived in peace against no one. Why should they target Kenya?
The morning of August 7th, 1998 came just like the other. Seeming normal, but it was not. The equatorial sun cut through the cool air, warming the tarmac of Uhuru Highway, already busy with the chaotic symphony of a Nairobi rush hour. The scent of diesel fumes mixed with the sweet aroma of mandazis frying at roadside kiosk. Brightly painted matatus, their side shouting slogans and pop star portraits weaved through traffic, their conductors hanging from doors, shouting destinations, town center, Koinange, with the crowds of office workers walking on the paths. At the very heart of this daily ritual, at the junction of Haile Selassie and Moi Avenue, stood the US Embassy. To the Kenyan passing by, it was just another building in the cityscape, a sign of a connected world. But on this morning, it was attacked. The normal routine of safety checks and morning travel was a thin veil about to be torn apart. At 10:35 a.m., a large truck posing as a delivery vehicle approached the embassy's secure perimeter. The guards, following protocol, stopped it from going further at the barrier. This careful action stopped a worse disaster, but the danger was already too close. The huge explosive device, filled with over 2,000 pounds of TNT, went off. The explosion was like the end of the world. It destroyed the truck, shattered the embassy's concrete frame, and made the floors collapse. The explosion hit the Cooperative Bank building across the street, tearing its whole front off. Offices full of people became a grave of fallen concrete and broken metal. The sound was heard for miles, but for those nearby, the world first went blindingly white, then terrifyingly dark. After the loud silence of the explosion, the first noises were not sirens, but people screaming and the sound of concrete being moved. Ordinary Kenyans, shop owners, mechanics, office staff, ignoring the danger, became the first to help. They clawed at the wreckage with their bare hands, their clothes tearing and fingers bleeding, in a frantic effort to find survivors in the dark, dusty air. Stories of heroism emerged from the Inferno, like that of a young office clerk thrown across his room by explosion. Despite his own injuries, he spent the next 12 hours pulling colleagues from the wreckage. His suit stayed with blood and dust. We were not Kenyans or Americans in that moment, one survivor recalled. We were just human beings trying to save other human beings. The attack was Kenya's brutal introduction to a new globalized war. It fundamentally reshaped the nation's security apparatus, but more than that, it stole a sense of safety. The world's conflict had arrived on Uhuru Highway, and the City of Light would forever bear the scars. December 27, 2007. Millions of Kenyans lined up, full of hope, to vote in an election that was a major turning point. The race was fiercely competitive, a taste of the nation's young multi-party democracy. But as the fourth counting stretched into a second day, the nation's hopeful energy began to soar. Television screens flickered with contradictory tallies. The long, unexpected wait felt to many like a planned betrayal, breaking the trust of millions. Then, on December 30th, in a quick, quiet ceremony, the incumbent, President Mwai Kibaki, was sworn in for a second term. For countless Kenyans watching, it wasn't a political victory. It was the sound of a door closing on their democratic voice.
Mimi, Mwai Kibaki, naapa kwamba nitatenda kazi zangu za urais kwa Jamhuri ya Kenya.
Political protests changed into something much worse. In one of the most terrible events, a mob surrounded a church in Kiambaa, Eldoret, where hundreds of families had gone for safety. The church was set on fire. Tragically, 35 people, most of them women and children, died in the flames. The burning of the church was not just a massacre, it was a profound desecration, a signal that no place was safe. Across the country, from the slums of Nairobi to the farms of the Rift Valley, neighbors who had lived side by side for decades became hunters and prey. But calling this just tribal violence is wrong. This was a political crisis that spread like sickness through society. The fight was started by leaders wanting power, but it exploded because of old unresolved problems, generations-old land disputes in the Rift Valley, the simmering resentment of communities who felt systematically marginalized from power and economic opportunity since independence. The violence exposed the fragile, papered over seams of the Kenyan nation. For 2 months, the country stared into the abyss of a potential civil war. It was this collective trauma that made the subsequent peace deal brokered by Kofi Annan not just a political compromise, but a national importance. The pain of that period became the primary driver for the most significant governance overhaul in a generation, the 2010 Constitution. This new social contract was a direct, painful response to the wounds of 2007, a desperate and determined attempt to build a decentralized nation with stronger institutions, a Bill of Rights, and a devolved government, where power and resources would never again be held by a single central authority. In the pre-dawn quiet of April 2nd, 2015, Garissa University College was a small picture of Kenya everyone hoped for. Its 815 students came from all over Kenya. They were Christians, Muslims, and everything in between. In their dormitories, dreams of becoming teachers, engineers, and doctors were being built over shared meals, late-night study sessions, and conversations that crossed every ethnic and religious line the country had ever known. The university was a quiet, strong rejection of the divisive beliefs of the militants just miles away across the Somali border. It stood for a future of learning, not fighting, of coming together, not pulling apart. At 5:30 a.m., as Christian students gathered for morning prayers and others prepared for early study, that very promise is what made it a target. The gunmen were not just attacking a building, they were aiming to murder the future itself. The 4 gunmen scaled the perimeter fence. Their first target were the security men at the main gate. They then moved with a cold purpose to the students' hostels, hunting for non-Muslims. For over 15 hours, they held hundreds hostage. Survivors told of lying still under their classmates, listening as the militants prayed between rounds of shootings. The government's response was little, but was heavily criticized for being too slow. A failure that later shocked the nation, leaving the students alone for hours. Amid the horror, there were acts of incredible courage. One heroic lecturer barricaded himself and over 100 students in a second-floor room, stacking furniture against the door and instructing them to remain silent, saving them from certain death. In the aftermath, the government's response was sweeping and controversial, leading to a massive crackdown on financial services. But Garissa was more than a terrorist attack. It was a calculated assault on the very idea of a unified, educated Kenya. It targeted the next generation's teachers, engineers, and doctors. The empty desk in lecture halls across the country became a silent, screaming memorial. In the dead of the night, Kyanguli school was silent. In dormitory number 8, 67 students were fast asleep. The doors were locked from outside, a common harsh rule in Kenyan boarding schools meant to stop students from running away. That night, the locks became death sentences. While 2 students lit a match that caused the fire, the real cause of the disaster was a failure of the system. The dormitory was a death trap. Only one locked door, bad windows, and walls covered in wood that burned easily. The common practice of locking students in at night, a brutal method of control, changed a place of rest into a sealed prison. The spark of arson met the tinder of negligence with catastrophic results. Rescuers who arrived later would describe a scene of unimaginable horror. They found the students' bodies stacked against the locked metal door. The image of that single locked metal door and the silent, ashen pile of young lives pressed against it became a searing national symbol. It represented a catastrophic betrayal of the most fundamental covenant in any society, that adults will protect the children in their care. In that charred doorway, the nation saw the brutal consequences of a system that prized control and discipline over humanity and safety. But the tragedy was compounded in the years that followed. The murder case against the 2 students who started the fire became a marathon of legal delays and procedural obstacles. When the judge handling the case resigned, the case collapsed. For the grieving parents, every postponed hearing was a fresh torment. When the case finally collapsed, it offered no closure. The 67 students were failed twice. First, by the dormitory that was their prison, and by the justice system that offered no accountability. This double betrayal left a scar on the national conscience that remains tender to this day. The Kyanguli fire was not a natural disaster. It was a man-made catastrophe that came out of a culture of control over care. The 67 students of Kyanguli did not just die in a fire. They were failed by every level of authority designed to protect them. Their memory is a permanent indictment of institutional neglect, a tragedy that proved with terrifying clarity that the greatest dangers can lie not outside, but within the very walls meant to keep us safe. A nation's soul is not forged in times of peace, but tested in the difficult moment of tragedy. We began by saying these events pushed Kenya's dream of peace, unity, and safety to its limit. From the shattered concrete of the embassy, we learned that resilience is not just rebuilding walls, but tending to the unseen wounds of a society. From the smoldering ashes of the post-election violence, we saw that unity is not the absence of difference, but the hard-fought choice to forge a new social contract from the remains of conflict. From the silent lecture halls of Garissa, we were reminded that hope is the most dangerous target for those who preach hate, because it is the one target that always inevitably grows back. And from the locked door of Kyanguli, we received the most painful lesson of all, that safety is a sacred promise we make to our most vulnerable, a promise that must never be broken by neglect or indifference. These 4 threads of tragedy are now forever woven into the fabrics of a nation. They are scars, yes, but they are also seals of a resilience that refuses to be broken, a unity that is constantly being chosen, a hope that is fiercely defended, and a collective memory that vows never again. The story of Kenya is not defined by these dark days, but by the relentless, unbreakable light that refused to be extinguished by them.